We're going to go ahead and jump right in. And again, this is just to go through the mitigation pre-application. So um, basically, if you look on the CDBG mitigation website, you'll see our timeline. And I'm not going to go through this in detail, but it does bring us to, if you look at the bottom point here on this slide, it brings us to November the 15th. We posted the mitigation pre-application on the website, and I'm going to move on now. So we are having our first webinar today to take some Q&A, and then next week, December the 12th at 10 a.m., we'll have the second webinar. And these are just to answer your questions and then give you a chance to ask any questions that may come up, because what we're trying to do is make sure that we answer these collectively so that no one person gets any special treatment. So again, you can find all this timeline on the website. I'm going to bounce in again to the bottom point on January 15th, 2020. Actually, there's a typo there. January 15th, 2020, the mitigation pre-applications are due to DCA. So if you are going to try and submit a full application, you must submit a pre-application. So I just want to make sure that we get that, that everybody understands that. If it's something that you think you will be putting a full application in for, at least get the pre-application in. Now, we're not looking for a dissertation on your mitigation needs here. We're just looking for kind of an idea of what you're thinking. So it doesn't have to be very long or very detailed. It just needs to give us an idea of the activities you're thinking about for mitigation. Again, if you'll look at the pre-application, do not submit attachments. We will not review them. So the next thing is February 21st, 2020. We're going to have a draft action plan published for public comment. So after you get your Q&As answered here for the mitigation pre-app, we will do a public comment period on the actual what we're going to submit to HUD, the draft of the action plan. So you'll have your chance to give us a comment, and we'll accept those up to the close of business on that day. And then what we'll do is we will take and incorporate all of those questions with answers into the action plan that we submit to HUD. Our action plan is due to HUD April 6th, 2020. And so when we submit that to HUD, they will have 60 days at the bottom point here. They'll have 60 days to either review and approve the action plan or reject the plan with comments. So since this is first time mitigation funding, we are not exactly sure what they're going to approve or not approve, and it's going to be up to them what we submit. They will have the option to do that. So between now and then, though, we're going to have two public hearings. One will be located in the Albany area in the 31705 zip code, and one is going to be located in the Kingsland in the 31548 zip code. So we're going to work and determine those places. Anybody on the coast, you can come to either one of them, but anybody on the coast can come to Kingsland if that's works out better for you. Or if you're in Southwest Georgia, you can come to Albany. But at this point, you can give, during these two public hearings, we're going to solicit input from the general public, from the community, from anybody else that wants to add into it. They can add input. We'll take that input. We will consider it. Not all input will end up into the action plan, because if we receive something that's totally off base with everything that we've studied and researched from GMA's guidance and looking into the state risk assessment and the county hazard mitigation plans, if it just doesn't line up with what is something that's likely going to happen, it may not end up in there. But you do get your chance to say your piece, and we will take a record of all that. So I'm not going to read the rest of this. Just know we have this timeline spelled out on the website, so you can go look at it. And if you Google CDBG DR Georgia, it'll take you straight to DCA's website for disaster recovery. Now, I wanted to cover basically, or just briefly, some of the things that you got to consider as you're looking at your pre-application and exactly what activities that you want to list. So number one, for any type of CDBG, CDBG DR, or CDBG mitigation funding, it has to meet a national objective. And in the pre-application, we list some of those, but also in the pre-application, we point you to where you can find all the the different nuances of the national objectives and their requirements. After you make sure that it meets a national objective, then you have to go down and say, is this a CDBG eligible activity? Although these mitigation funds are new, they still have to be an eligible activity under HUD unless you get some type of waiver. So if there are a great number of applications that come in for something that's not typically funded, if it's something that's even in their realm of consideration, we will submit a request and just ask and see what they think, or if we need to submit a waiver, we can do that. After you see that it meets the national objective and it is an eligible activity, then you want to go down and say, is this a state, regional, and or local priority? And if it's and or, it should be both. It should meet, all three of these, because locally you guys know what you need. We want to make sure if there are larger projects that have a regional impact, they're counted for. And then also we want to make sure that you've looked at your state plan. And I will tell you, we have worked very closely with GEMA as we have looked at what the risks are in the state, and as we're developing the pre-app, we've spoke to them and we've consulted with them as far as what we're going to kind of be focused on. So after that, and you'll see there's a link to it in our pre-application. Once again, the community lifelines, and these are FEMA's community lifelines. There are about there's 7 lifelines, and so whatever activity you're proposing needs to address one of these lifelines. And in your description of what's going to be taking place, you can kind of just outline how that will mitigate or protect one of these lifelines. So also, while this is there's not a requirement for a match locally, we are looking for leverage. Let's say that you need to do phase 2 of a project and phase 1 has already been done. This phase 2 is a different project, but it would be benefit, or it could benefit from the work that's been done before, or you have studies or anything like that. We're looking for leverage, or if you're putting in a match yourself, or if you have money you want to put in, we're looking to see, the leverage from the community, some skin in the game, so to speak. We'll also be taking into account readiness to proceed. HUD has a 6 to 12 year timeline after the action plan is approved and the grant agreement is signed. It starts the clock on 6 to 12 years. These projects must be completed. From our commissioner, and because these events happened years ago, we want to make sure that we get these funds out the door as quick as possible. So we are trying to get closer to that 6-year period, and we do not want to drag out any further than that. But once you start funneling it down, and if it doesn't meet these criteria, then it's probably not going to be something we fund. So you get to your top 3 priorities: priority 1 activity, priority 2 activity, priority 3 activity. You can submit more than 1 application per unit of local government. So we're taking these applications in from the cities and counties in the impacted 15 counties that are eligible for the funds. So if you submit these applications or these pre-applications, just know that we'll take 3 applications per unit of local government. Now, we need you to prioritize these: priority 1, priority 2, priority 3. DCA does not want to be the people saying, or the agency that says what is a priority in your community. We need you to tell us. Aside from that, and I think I might be getting ahead of myself, is it planning projects or planning activities are separate from what we're talking about with the pre-app. So if you submitted 3 pre-apps, priority 1, 2, 3, and you say, well, we also have planning needs, you could submit another app and say, this is just a planning need that we have to, look at our building codes or enhance different comp plans, or, our local hazard mitigation plan. So if you're considering some of this stuff, and as you're considering activities, you want to think, is this in a local plan? We're not trying to fund things that have just popped up all of a sudden, although not saying that we won't, but we want to look at things long range that you've been thinking about for a while that would help you guys or your community recover in the case of a natural disaster, or be better prepared to reduce or eliminate the effects of a disaster as it comes in to especially life and property. So is it in a comp plan? Is it in your local hazard mitigation plan? Is it possibly in a master plan or other planning document? Just be thinking about that. And as you're thinking about that, studies have shown that enhanced building codes and measures to make sure you're building better and stronger is going to help you in the long run as far as mitigation efforts go. You won't be replacing as much as you build correctly in the first place. So these are just some things to think about when you're going down that road. Now, I'm going to jump to what we've received so far as some frequently asked questions, and then we will open it up to the floor. So number one, can you submit more than one priority one pre-application? No, you cannot. So you gotta score them yourself. Priority one, priority two, priority three, and we need to know what you think is your priorities. So we'll move on from that because that's a no. Will radio infrastructure, radio equipment, or enhanced 911 equipment be eligible for funding? In the past, CDBG funds have not funded these. It's likely that they will not fund them in the future or with these mitigation funds. However, certain parts of these, it's possible. I will tell you that for radio equipment, we have already sent a request into HUD just to get some clarification on will they or will they not fund these with mitigation funds. We have spoken with our local or our state folks here on broadband and our GIO officer, or for GIO information officer, about the next gen 911 and some of that. So some of that is possible. It's just not something that's been funded traditionally, and we would have to get a waiver for it. So, or it would be on the outer edges of what's possible for HUD funding, just so that you guys are aware. So will the CDBG DR team provide assistance with determining eligibility for activities during the pre-application period? No, we will not. If you look in the pre-application, we have a link to what HUD is determined to be eligible activities under CDBG. So if you look there, we're wanting you to kind of weed out what you think is fundable and to make your case on why you think so. So what is the deadline for submitting the pre-apps? Again, that is January 15th, 2020. January 15th, 2020. And what happens after we've submitted the pre-applications? We are going to take these applications and use them as a guide to what we submit to HUD. This guide will also be used in conjunction with our consultation with GEMA. So we're taking your local activities, the things that you want to do and want to see done locally. We're going to take those and we're going to use all these metrics that come in from these pre-applications to determine what are the activities that rise to the top. We will submit these things then to HUD, and we will see what they approve or do not approve. So with that, that is the end, I think, of the slides. And like I said, this will be short and sweet. We're going to go ahead and start answering questions here. Oh, wow. Oh, okay. So will we get a copy of these slides? And I'm going to say, yes, you will. And that is dependent on the lovely Jessica Reynolds over here, who's been helping us put this webinar together. If she doesn't get them to you, I'll give you her email address. Just reach out to me. But yes, you'll get a copy of these. We should have them. Then we'll have to get them submitted. We'll get them up on the website. So you'll be able to get them there from the website. One of the next ones is, what is the funding match? There is no funding match requirement. But again, we're leaving it up to you to determine what skin you're putting in the game. Regular with CDBG, our regular competitive round is, it's a 75-25. Well, with this, there's not. So a match. Let's see here. Will a determination about eligibility of communication, radio infrastructure, and equipment be made prior to the pre-app deadline? We have submitted it to HUD. My guess is no, we will not have an answer prior to the pre-app deadline. That is my guess. What role will GEMA play in the project decision process? So how this is going to work is, as you submit a pre-application, we are going to take that in and guiding what we submit to HUD. We will then take and solicit from those pre-applications somebody for you to come in for a full application. GEMA will help us establish the criteria for what gets points during this process. So your point determination is GEMA is going to help play a role in that. Also, again, we'll be consulting with GEMA throughout the whole process. So, are joint applications counted as separate from single government applications? That is a good question that I will probably have to get back to you on. That is a great question. And there's actually several of them. If a joint application is done, will that count as one of your three? This is something I'm gonna have to get back to you on for several of those things. Now, I will tell you, we have our HUD TA expert here with us as well. And before our next webinar, I will try to have answers to these other questions so that we can include those in the FAQs. We'll start it out with that and we'll go forward. We got a question here that says, we are considering requesting fixed generators for our fire stations. Can we bundle this request into one, or will each generator be its own project? I'm going to turn, so generators have been a topic of discussion, and you say fixed generator, which is good that you spelled it out that way, because we got a definite no on portable generators. I will tell you that. So in my opinion, if the project is going to be separate, then it will be a separate activity. I don't know. I'm going to defer to our HUD TA.
Good afternoon. I think it's really going to depend on how you're looking to purchase and install these, and whether or not, and the way in which you're meeting the national objective. Because if you're putting it in fire stations in different locations across a large geography, what national objective you're using could vary from station to station. So that's one consideration. Or I wouldn't say no. I think bulk purchases can be beneficial because there's cost savings in them. They're certainly an eligible activity or use, but I would really focus on what is the long-term benefit, what is the strategic advantage of doing it one way versus another way. If you can make a strong case to make it one application, make your case.
Yeah. So exactly what he said, I concur. Let's see here. Can applicants submit for both DR and mitigation funds? So I will tell you, our DR, this came in one grant. Let me jump back real quick to the bundling of the applications. And then I'll jump on to the next question. But I tell you what, I'm going to jump on to the next question. I think we're going to stay with Grant's answer there. But I just want to say too that what he's speaking of is because with these mitigation funds, they came up with a new national objective, the urgent need mitigation national objective. But remember, the thing that we have to address first is 50% of these funds must address a low to moderate income benefit, low to moderate income national objective. So just be thinking about that as you're submitting projects or activities. So let me go to, go back up to this one here. We got several questions coming in. So can applicants submit for both DR and mitigation funds? So this was one grant, $64,904,000. However, HUD separated it into an unmet needs allocation, which was $37,943,000, and then this mitigation allocation, which is $26,961,000. The unmet needs portion, the 37 million, we determined that there was more need than there were funds available. So those will all go into the mid zip codes, which are the three zip codes, 31705, 31548, and 31520. So it's going to go in those zip codes. Now, for mitigation, these pre-apps are only for mitigation funds. They are nothing to do with the unmet need allocation. All right. Can separate water sewer boards submit an application separately from the local municipal government, or do they need to be combined? They need to come from a unit of general local government, so your city or your county. They're going to need to be, we want to see collaboration. So you need to collaborate, pull these things together and go through your city or county. Would land banks okay, I'm trying to read how this quick.
Would land banks be able to implement eligible housing?
Okay, so would land banks be able to implement eligible housing programs? So it is an eligible activity. I guess just put that into your pre-app when you put it in there as the potential recipient.
So a land bank, it would depend, one, on whether or not it's a nonprofit or a quasi-government agency. In either case, they are eligible to be subrecipients. So yes, a land bank can be a subrecipient to implement housing program activities, just as we saw with NSP.
So
For those that don't know NSP, it's the former stimulus neighborhood stabilization program funds.
just remember, speaking toward the land banks, in the past, DCA has traditionally worked through general local government. So that is their preferred method, is working through those cities and counties, just so that you know. Are engineering planning costs eligible? Yes, they are. Are you talking specific activity? I guess would be my follow-up question to that.
Again, engineering planning costs are an eligible expense, but within the context of what? As a standalone, just planning activity, if you were to say, hire an engineer to update your local building codes, that could be one type of use that is an eligible expense. If it's part of the budget to work towards a large infrastructure project, that is also an eligible expense, but it would be part of that larger project application, not its own.
And that's why we have the expert here. How is a low to moderate income classified? Countywide income, census tract income, zip code income, or other?
So for those of you that don't come from HUD land, the HUD Exchange has an excellent series of guides and forms and information on how to establish a low or moderate income benefit. In this case, I think what you're referring to is what's known as low mod area benefit. And you can use either census data or American Survey data. And there are detailed guides on the HUD Exchange as to how to approach establishing a low mod area benefit using either sets of data.
All right, so
Looks like it's the end of our questions, except for that you'll need to get back to them about the joint applications or the how many submissions.
yes, and we will read through these, and if we didn't get to yours, because I will be honest with you, if there's something I look like I can't answer, I'm just not going to answer it till later. But what we'll do is we will get you an answer later. So thank you all for participating. The next one will be a little bit longer and we'll get into a little bit more detail. But we appreciate you guys jumping in and giving us these great questions. If you have anything in the interim, just write it down, bring it to the next webinar, and let's talk about it. So
and for those of you that are not familiar with the HUD Exchange tool, it is a website that HUD has created as the encyclopedia of knowledge for all of the HUD-funded programs. And the recent webinars and guidance from HUD, including the notice for this mitigation award, is posted there. So you can go to www.hudexchange.org, I believe, or GOV. Info. Sorry.
if you Google it, it should come up. All right. So with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Jessica. Thank you guys for attending.
Thank you, guys. We will get this video out to you as well as the presentation, and we should be able to get that sometime tomorrow. Give us a chance to go through the recording, make sure everything works. But yeah, you guys should get it sometime tomorrow. So thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time.